CAPRICORN!
Spoiler season has begun. Now, we're going to start this video off by talking about yesterday's spoilers that we missed, get caught up on those really quick, and then we'll go into the couple of spoilers that have dropped today and really talk about how this set looks to be shaping up moving forward. So we're going to start this with looking at Pyre of Heroes. Now, Pyre of Heroes is an artifact for 2 mana. You can pay 2 and tap it, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card that shares a creature type with the sacrificed creature and has converted mana cost equal to 1 plus that creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Now, obviously this is similar to cards like Birthing Pod and Vannifar. Birthing Pod is insane, so we can't expect anything to ever be on that power level again, but I would like to argue that Pyre of Heroes in a lot of ways is better than Vannifar. First of all, you can use it the turn it comes into play. It doesn't have a summoning sickness like Vannifar does. Also, it's not a creature, so it's a lot easier to remove. The biggest problem with Vannifar was that you could remove it with pretty much any creature removal spell or just damage, and with Pyre of Heroes, you don't have that problem. It's also worth noting it's not a legendary artifact, so you can play multiples. Also, it costs less than 3 mana. So one of the big ways of taking care of cards like this in the current standard format is to play like an Elspeth Conquers Death and remove it. And this can't be targeted by Elspeth Conquers Death because it only costs 2 mana. So if we're looking at standard, at least with what cards we know already coming from Kaldheim, there aren't a whole lot of ways to get rid of Pyre of Heroes, and the ability itself is great. So obviously this fits into like clerics or goblins, and could really see those archetypes really go to the next level. But I'm interested to see what kind of creature themes we see come out of Kaldheim itself going forward. See how many different types of decks this could really work with. The fact that it has to be a creature that shares a creature type is not insignificant, and it does mean that this is more of a build-around card. But there are a lot of interesting things you could probably do with this card moving forward. Being able to search up whatever you need every turn should not be overlooked. The fact that you can use this once a turn every turn is really, really powerful. Reusable tutors have always been really powerful, so being able to get whatever creature you need in the heat of the moment, as well as being a great sack outlet, is super powerful. We don't have a lot of great sack outlets in the current standard environment. We lost Priest of Forgotten Gods during rotation, and so we've kind of been trying to figure out a way to fill that hole. And although I don't think Pyre of Heroes necessarily does that, it does shore up some of the slots that you really need for a deck like that to work, for a sacrificial type sort of deck. And it will be interesting to see what kind of builds come out of this card. Really excited about that card. I love artifacts in general, so it's really, really awesome. We're going to move on next to Showdown of the Scalds. Now, Showdown of the Scalds is a saga, so they are finally bringing back sagas. I am so stoked. Sagas are my absolute favorite kind of card. When they returned in Theros, I was really, really excited about it. And we got some really, really cool ones. Obviously, Elspeth Conquers Death is probably the best. But I've been really just pining to see them take that theme and carry it forward again. It's been quite a while. I don't even know if we've ever had 2 different sets that both contain sagas in the same format. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, but I think this might be the first time we have 2 different sets in Standard that have sagas. because I believe the first set that they were introduced in was Dominaria, and then Theros, and this will be the third set. And I don't believe Dom and Theros were ever in the same standard environment. Either way, moving forward. Showdown of the Scalds. This costs 4 mana total, 1 white, 1 red, and 2 colorless. Its page 1 is to exile the top 4 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Page 2 and page 3 are both, whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So the obvious use for this card is to stick it in Boros, play a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, you run out of cards in your hand, you drop Showdown of the Scalds, and then next turn you go nuts, play a bunch of small creatures again, get a bunch of +1/+1 counters. A lot of times, really aggressive decks like Mono Red or like Boros Rush, they just run out of gas, and that's their main problem. So a card like this, to prevent you from running out of gas, is really, really great. I could even go as far as to say that this might be used in control builds, because even though the +1/+1 counters are a bit more negligible in a control deck, I could see a world where you drop a 3-drop that might be your finisher, maybe Citizen Champion, for example, which will trigger on Constellation when you play this. But you play this turn 4, you fill up your hand with a lot of low-cost removal spells, and then on turn 5, you just get rid of everything, or you cast card draw, you cast something like Stomp, which will then remove the Bone Crusher Giant from the game, and so you'll be able to play it as the Giant on a later turn without having to worry about missing your window to play it if it's one of the 4 removed cards, which is really, really cool. Things like that, and then your Citizen Champion gets really, really big. So I could even see this in a world where it might be used in control, where the +1/+1 counters are a bit negligible, but maybe you stack them all on your win condition, and really it's kind of like a draw 4 for 4 mana, because you're able to use those cards before they would go away, as long as you build around it properly. Alright, enough about sagas. I love sagas, but we're going to move on. If you could think of something else to use that for, definitely chime in the comments. I'm really interested also in the pathways. So we were missing 4 pathways when they got released in Zendikar, and they were very, very key color combinations that have been pretty overpowered recently. So the Simic Pathway, obviously Simic has been busted since way before rotation, and it stayed busted. They keep trying to prevent it from being busted by banning things like Uro, and it doesn't work. Simic is just gross, always. So we are getting the Simic Pathway finally, which is awesome. We're also getting the Rakdos Pathway, which Rakdos lately has been quite the contender, utilizing things like Kroxa and other sort of card advantage engines and escape cards that take advantage of the fact that the environment is so full of rogues and rogue mill. So getting that Rakdos Pathway is great. And then we've got the Golgari Pathway, and finally the Azorius Pathway. So we finally have the entire cycle of pathways. Now what's really exciting about having all of the pathways finally available in Standard and beyond is you can make some really, really interesting deck decisions based on sort of the edge value that you get off of the other colors. And what I mean by this is you can take, say, something like Tazri, Beacon of Unity. You can make a mono-white deck, a mono-white party deck that just really, really pushes the best of what mono-white brings, but then run every pathway that makes white. That way, once you get a few white sources in play and you don't really need to worry about your colors, you start playing all your pathways as the other colors so that you can eventually activate Tazri's ability for way, way, way less than it would normally be in a mono-white deck. And little edge value things like this that you can do just by having so many options to so many different pathways are really, really interesting. You could have 16 different pathways in your mono white deck that can each make different colors. So that could be really interesting, and I'd like to see other similar deck decisions go down this route. You know, for example, using like a blue deck with Fae of Wishes and having things in the sideboard that might be off color, but having pathways in your main board so that, like, if you happen to have enough blue, you play the pathway for something else, and then you can wish for something of that color. Should be really interesting. I'd really like to see some sort of tech like this get utilized, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that happen. Anyway, let's move on to the newer cards. The newer cards are exciting. So we have 2 new cards that were spoiled today. One of them is called Realm Walker and is a green creature. The other one is called Magda, Brazen Outlaw. We're going to talk about Magda first, and then we'll talk about Realm Walker. So Magda, Brazen Outlaw is a 2/1 legendary creature, Dwarf Berserker. It's a rare. Costs 1 red and 1. Other creatures you control, other dwarves you control, get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now, this card seems bonkers. Already I can tell you treasures are going to be back. Seemingly, at least, treasures are going to be back. And there are going to be powerful artifacts and dragons in this set, most likely. A 2/1 for 2 is fine on its own. The fact that it gives all dwarves +1 attack is really, really awesome. I have to assume there's going to be a lot of dwarves in this deck. The theme of Kaldheim and it being Norse and Viking really makes you think that there would be dwarves in this anyway. But this really hammers it home that dwarves are going to be one of the sub-themes in the set. And the idea of dwarves being a viable archetype moving forward is really interesting. The fact that treasures are coming back, and every time your dwarf becomes tapped, you get a treasure. What's cool about that is you don't even have to attack with them. If you find other ways to tap your dwarves, you can still get the treasures. And if you can make enough treasure tokens early enough, you can get out a really bomb artifact or dragon card really early. You know, being able to search up like a chromatic orrery or one of the big dragons that exists and just plopping it into play earlier than you otherwise should be able to seems really powerful. It really depends how many cards it has to go with it that enable this, but it seems like this could be really, really cool. At the very least, it's full of flavor and super fun. So I love the idea of just sacking 5 treasures and bringing out a giant dragon. It's really cool. Moving on, we're going to talk about Realm Walker. Now, this is the last card of the day. This is a 2/3 for 1 green and 2. Converted mana cost of 3. It's a creature shapeshifter. It's a rare. Changeling. This card is every creature type. As Realm Walker enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. Now, this card is awesome. First of all, Changeling is back. Shapeshifters are back. I almost didn't think they'd do it. I didn't think they had the balls. After filling Zendikar with party creatures and party themes, the idea of bringing back Changeling seems like it might be a little overpowered, to be honest. Now, don't be fooled by how low power this card might seem on the surface. If you couple this with party mechanics, it could be insane. If there are more shapeshifters, if this is a sign of things to come and there are more shapeshifters in the set, and you can make a shapeshifter party deck where you're just getting all the party payoffs with a bunch of shapeshifter creatures so that you don't even have to worry about having the right specific creature types in play, oh my god, the power level of that would be insane. The fact that it also lets you cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library is awesome. You can just choose Shapeshifter. If there's enough Shapeshifters in the set and you build a deck around the Shapeshifters with party payoffs, you can just name Shapeshifter and play Shapeshifters off the top of your deck. In the right deck, this could be insane. Even if you're not playing it in a Shapeshifter deck, if you play it in, like, for example, a Cleric deck or a Dwarf deck, or really an Elf deck, any kind of tribal focused deck, like, you can just rip things off the top. That seems pretty crazy. You have to build around it to an extent, but man, this could be really good. It's really good in any sort of tribal themed build around deck, but it's also really good with the party mechanic, and that's how I'm excited to use it. As awesome as it would be to use with specific tribes, I think pairing this with party mechanics, so many different really cool party payoffs in Zendikar that just aren't quite consistent enough to be able to really push to tier 1. Shapeshifters are in the environment, and that all goes out the window. Party could be absolutely bonkers, especially with the fact that there is a D&D themed set coming out next summer, and I'm sure Party will be returning in that. I really think Party's going to end up being super powerful moving forward. So anyway, that's today's spoilers. Things are looking pretty interesting. I'll be having another update video come out later in the week where I talk about some of the general themes of Kaldheim and some of the info that isn't spoiler specific, so look for that. But it was important today to make sure I just got the first spoilers out there as soon as possible so you guys could check these out. Hold the presses. While I was in the middle of editing this video, a new card came in. It looks like Kaya the Inexorable has been spoiled. Now this is the new legendary planeswalker Kaya in this set. She costs 1 black, 1 white, and 3 colorless, so a total converted mana cost of 5. Legendary planeswalker Kaya, 5 starting loyalty, +1 ability. Put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target creature, 1 target non-token creature specifically. It gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. That sounds insane, especially when you use it on your own stuff. The -3 loyalty ability is exile target non-land permanent. And then we have -7 as her ultimate. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying its mana cost. This card's insane. First of all, that ultimate is nuts. Being able to put legendaries into play for free seems bonkers. I feel like this fits well with like General Kudro and General's Enforcer. You could play legendary humans, try to get to Kaya's ultimate to put your legendaries into play, but also be playing General's Enforcer to give all of those legendary creatures indestructible. Obviously, the -3 exile target non-land permanent is just plain powerful, and a way for it to protect itself and make sure it's not a do-nothing planeswalker. Make sure you get value out of it no matter what. At the very least, you can drop this on turn 5, remove any threat you need to, and even if they deal with it afterwards, you went up on card advantage and dealt with the biggest threat in the board. For 5 mana, that's insane value. It also leaves it at 2 loyalty after you do it instead of 1. Most abilities that do something like that on a planeswalker, when you activate them the first turn, it leaves the planeswalker at 1 loyalty. So the fact that it's -3, leaving the planeswalker at 2, is really powerful. The +1, though, is what's really interesting. The fact that the creature goes back to its owner's hand means you usually want to use it on your own creatures. If you can uptick this and put a ghost form counter on your own creature, you can chump block with it or sacrifice it to an ability, possibly even the first card that we spoiled earlier in this video. Sacrifice it or chump block with it, it goes back to your hand and you get a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying, and then you can replay the creature that went back to your hand. So if you use this with things like Charming Prince or like Baron or Acquisitions Expert, or Skyclave Apparition, or any of these creatures that have great enters the battlefield triggers, you can really abuse it. Imagine using this card in an Esper deck with Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. Not only being able to replay Atris and re-trigger things by returning it to your hand, but also if you get to your ultimate, you could theoretically replay Atris for free from your graveyard off the emblem over and over, which is nuts. Skyclave Apparition can remove things and come back to your hand. You're making spirit tokens the whole time. Seems really cool. Nyambe Esteemed Speaker might be an awesome card to go with this too, because again, the ultimate helps you get your legendaries into play, and Nyambe is one. But it also has really interesting enters the battlefield abilities. So you return Nyambe to your hand, and then you can replay it and return something else to your hand, and replay it, and then use Kaya to return something else to your hand, and it just gets nutty, I guess. I don't know. This card seems really, really awesome. I think we're going to see Esper Super Friends seeing this version of Kaya combined with like the 5-drop Ashiok would be pretty insane. And wow, I really, really want to play Orzhov now. Wow. Really, really interested in where this set's going. Really, really interested in the death metal theme that it's got kind of going on, and more about that in the later video. But like the video if you don't mind. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe. Leave me a comment what you think about these cards. If you think of another use for some of these that I haven't thought of, definitely leave it in the comments down below. Super interested to see how these cards could be paired with what's currently in the standard environment. But anyway, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time.